Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring a story that is both unexpected and quietly compelling. Prince and the hidden connections with kindred spirits in the music world. The legendary artist was not only celebrated for his extraordinary genius, but also known for guarding his inner life with almost absolute silence. Yet beyond the bright lights and unforgettable performances, there are subtle echoes of private bonds with fellow creatives, stories that were never meant for headlines and rarely spoken aloud. So who were these figures? And why did these chapters remain carefully sealed in the shadows? Let's step into this intriguing journey together, right now. For Prince, sex wasn't just about pleasure, it was a spiritual experience, something sacred and God-given. He was a symbol of both freedom and deep inner conflict. And he shared love with 5 well-known men. But none of those relationships were ever made public, not out of shame, but because the world simply wasn't ready to accept those who didn't fit the norm. No photos, no statements, just lingering glances, quiet nights, and songs layered with hidden meaning. For Prince, intimacy was never just about sensation, it was a deeply symbolic experience, something he believed was sacred and shaped by a higher purpose. He became a figure who embodied both boundless freedom and a quiet inner struggle, and along his journey, he formed profound connections with 5 well-known men. Yet none of these bonds were ever placed under the public lens, not because of guilt, but because the world of that time was not prepared to welcome those who moved beyond familiar boundaries. No images, no declarations, only lingering looks, silent evenings, and melodies layered with meanings that few could ever truly decipher. George Michael was the first name to ignite quiet speculation, yet the figures who followed were the true revelations. There was the woman in the shimmering fur gown who shared a fleeting dance with Prince beneath the lights of Studio 54. The man who once described him as a shining phantom, always hovering just above the room during endless midnight sessions. One soul who dared to stand openly in his own truth, and another who never quite found the courage to cross that line. It was a catalog Prince never put on paper, but one he revealed in other ways, through a glance, within his melodies, and in the tender silence he left behind. When George Michael first encountered Prince, he couldn't bring himself to meet his eyes, not from nervousness, but because Prince's gaze carried a rare intensity, so calm and piercing it could freeze you in place. There was something in the way Prince observed people, not with words, but with a silence so profound it made you feel quietly uncovered. Years later, someone from the MTV VMA's lighting crew in the late 80 seconds would remember, "I had never seen George look so tightly held together." That day, George Michael appeared slightly out of rhythm. Famous for his luminous smile, effortless confidence, and the way he could dominate any space with ease, he was normally impossible to unsettle. Yet backstage, just moments before Prince was set to arrive, George straightened his cuff 4 separate times, a minor movement that spoke volumes to those who understood him. The fabric was already perfect. The gesture was simply a shield for what he didn't want to reveal. The tension lingered, soft but undeniable. To the world, it looked like nothing more than respect between 2 legends. But to those who stood close, it hinted at something deeper. Restless energy, quiet expectation, and a carefully guarded sense of vulnerability. Prince arrived the way he always did, soft-spoken, unreadable. He offered few words, no embrace, no formal greeting, and yet, the simple fact of his presence subtly rearranged the atmosphere in the room. He and George exchanged only a brief conversation. No touch, no prolonged glances, just sentences, carefully placed. Still, the moment left behind an unusual aftertaste. One crew member later admitted, "I have no idea what they discussed, but it felt like more than just music." What began as an offhand remark slowly drifted into legend, a quiet enigma no one could confirm, yet no one could fully set aside. George was slowly emerging from the bright, carefree shadow of Wham! His polished image, shaping himself into an artist who was serious, complex, and quietly divided within. Prince, by contrast, had always moved as a mystery fluid in expression, endlessly inventive and profoundly alone inside the world he had created. They were not identical, yet they were far less different than the public ever assumed. Both lived within two parallel lives, the one beneath the stage lights, where every feeling was carefully designed, and the one behind closed doors, where they silently grappled with what it truly meant to exist. If there was anyone who could understand the fatigue of endlessly playing the leading role in their own life, it was them. Yet what matters most is not the moment they crossed paths, but everything that never came after. The absence, the truths left unvoiced, carried only within their songs. And in that emptiness, it becomes most palpable: the solitude, the yearning to be accepted, and the quiet ache they both bore, hidden far beneath the surface. No one ever addressed their connection in public. There were no images, no interviews confirming that Prince and George Michael ever met in private. They never shared a stage, never released a joint project, never allowed the world to see them side by side. The only traces were the delicate signals hidden within their music. Many listeners have long believed that George's gentle yet divided hit father figure carried echoes of Prince's influence and presence. And so, that quiet belief has continued to feed a lasting question about what truly linked these two legends beyond the spotlight. The song Father Figure carries delicate harmonies, yearning lines, and an atmosphere that hovers between longing and restraint. Many listeners hear in it an echo of the mood and color that defined Prince's era of Purple Rain. George Michael never publicly confirmed such an influence, yet he never brushed it aside either. When once asked about Prince's effect on his work, he simply smiled and replied, "I listen to Prince the way I listen to myself, only with more courage." That elusive answer only deepened the curiosity of fans. For them, music became the quiet code that seemed to link two distant spirits beyond words. Prince was always intensely protective of his inner world. He never spoke publicly about George Michael, even though it was widely known that he deeply respected and followed the British star's music. Yet that quiet was never a sign of distance for Prince. Silence was a shield, a way to guard the most valuable parts of his life. Certain connections, once formed, were not meant to be handled by the public eye. Those who truly understood him believed that his restraint itself carried a powerful message. Now, here's a question for you. If you were a famous artist like Prince, would you have the courage to openly share your true identity or personal love life? Comment yes if you believe in living openly, or no if you feel some things are still best kept private because of social pressure. Every comment helps us understand and connect more deeply, and who knows, you might even inspire someone else. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss our next special stories. There have long been quiet whispers that the two artists exchanged several late-night phone calls, though no one has ever known what was truly said. One music producer once recalled that George Michael experimented with a guitar phrase inspired by Prince, simply to understand the feeling behind it. He recorded the idea and mailed the cassette to Prince as a private gesture. What Prince thought of it was never revealed, but a few weeks later, George composed an entirely new chorus as a kind of wordless musical response. That melody was never shared with the public, remaining hidden in his personal notebooks, slowly lost amid a difficult and unsettled chapter of his life. It remains curious that two artists with such immense talent and influence never collaborated or appeared side by side in public. They never shared a stage, were never paired for a performance, and offered the media no signs of a close bond. That absence only deepened the intrigue, leading many to wonder whether something more complex than friendship or professional admiration lay beneath the surface. Why did they choose such careful distance? One musician who once worked with George Michael later shared that George felt intimidated by Prince, not in fear, but in the sense of being wary of losing himself if he stepped too near someone so singular and powerful. George once admitted that if he allowed himself to get too close to Prince, he feared being carried too far and losing the shape of who he was. Prince was famous for dissolving boundaries in every kind of relationship, while George found himself drawn to what felt dangerous and unknown. Perhaps what they shared was simply deep respect and mutual admiration. Perhaps it was only an intense friendship, shaped by distance and caution. Or perhaps it was a brief flicker of something more, a feeling they could not, or chose not to, give a name. Yet one truth remains. There was a singular bond between them, something difficult to explain in words and impossible for time to ever fully erase. Years later, when George looked back on the years he spent in quiet fear concealing his true self, to avoid the weight of judgment, he was asked whether he had ever loved someone he could never openly name. George fell silent for a moment, turned his eyes toward the window, and then softly replied, "There are people I keep only for myself, because if I told the world, I was afraid it would shatter the most beautiful thing between us." His answer touched everyone who heard it and ignited endless curiosity about who he might have been thinking of, a question that, in the end, no one ever truly answered. Prince left this world as unexpectedly as he had lived, without explanations, without closure, leaving behind only questions and a legacy that continues to echo through time. Not long after, George Michael also departed, carrying with him unfinished melodies and private chapters that were never spoken aloud or given a name. And so their story remains one of music's most enduring enigmas, a quiet symbol of freedom, mystery, and emotions so deep that only those who truly stood close to them could ever begin to understand. Their story, if it ever truly existed, can only be sensed, never fully defined. It lingers in half-light, in a melody subtly shaped by another's presence, in the long pauses that, if you listen closely, resemble a single note in an unspoken love song. And if, as many believe, music is the place where the deepest feelings choose to hide, then perhaps Prince and George Michael understood one another in silence, choosing restraint to protect something rare and fragile. Not every truth needs to be uncovered. Some bonds live only in the narrow space between light and shadow, between a song and the story that remains forever unwritten. Speculation first arose when Prince and Sylvester James Jr. were spotted standing unusually close, though no clear evidence ever followed. No one captured a defining moment between them, no scene that could settle the questions. Yet it was precisely that uncertainty that made the story linger. It felt like a narrative never spoken aloud, something that might have been real, yet forever kept in the margins. And sometimes, it is the absence of answers that speaks more powerfully than any confession ever could. When the two found themselves on the same dance floor beneath the glittering lights and the soft murmur of a late night, it wasn't the music that held people's attention, it was a strange, almost unnameable atmosphere. A blend of curiosity and quiet uncertainty, like witnessing something familiar yet impossibly distant. They stood close in space, yet far apart in spirit. It was the 80 seconds, when Prince was at the peak of his brilliance, his presence glowing everywhere he went. Sylvester, meanwhile, embodied a different kind of legend, not only on stage, but as a fearless voice for those who had none. Sylvester was celebrated as the Queen of Disco, yet he never allowed labels to confine him. He was simply Sylvester, singular, unrepeatable, carrying a presence no trend could imitate. And it was this rare authenticity that drew Prince in, not through dramatic gestures or public displays, but through quiet respect and an effortless magnetism. In an industry weighed down by pressure and narrow definitions, Sylvester stood as a living symbol of freedom, showing Prince that you did not have to choose a side, you could choose yourself, and still rise beyond every boundary. Perhaps somewhere deep within Prince at that time, there lived a silent desire to slip beyond every boundary. They met at Studio 54, a place where differences were welcomed without explanation. In that space, words were unnecessary for anyone to know who they truly were. Simply standing beside one another, they shaped a story of their own, rich with quiet meaning and depth, like distant stars glowing softly in the dark. although it lasted no more than an hour on the crowded dance floor. That fleeting encounter was enough to plant countless unfinished stories in the minds of those who witnessed it. Then, just as suddenly, the two disappeared into the night. No one saw them move toward a dressing room, step into a waiting car, descend to the basement, or rise to the roof. The quiet and uncertainty that followed their meeting has never truly faded, becoming one of the most haunting chapters of a glittering era, filled with questions that time has never been able to resolve. They seemed to disappear without a trace, leaving behind only confusion. I remember Prince in a deep purple velvet suit, standing beside Sylvester in a white fur coat that brushed the floor. One former staff member later recalled, though whether it was memory or the blur of the night was impossible to know. They did not speak, they did not gesture, they simply stood there. Yet that very stillness made the moment feel suspended in time, filling the room with an unusual tension, as if something unspoken hovered in the air, something everyone sensed, but no one dared to define. It held the attention of everyone present, not because they revealed anything, but because they revealed nothing at all. Between them existed a shadowed space where imagination and caution quietly met. Funk and disco, two musical worlds that seemed far apart, were drawn together through these two men in an almost effortless way. Prince's sound was sharp and electric, driven by burning guitars and flashes of raw intensity, while Sylvester's disco voice was gentle yet commanding, like a preacher guiding a waiting congregation. This meeting of styles did more than captivate an audience. It shaped a silent, meaningful bond between them, one that never needed to be spoken to be understood. That bond led many in the music world to believe a collaboration was inevitable, yet it never came to pass. No shared recordings, no songs written together, no tours that placed them side by side. Their continued quiet only deepened the whispers, persuading many that the silence itself was the clearest sign of something more. In the end, it was what never happened between them that became the most haunting part of their story, giving the legend of two iconic artists an allure that words can scarcely describe. One small detail, often missed by many, is that after that night, Prince's performance style seemed to change in subtle ways. The flowing shirts, the deep eye makeup, the long, graceful yet intentional movements all gently reflected traces of Sylvester's spirit and aesthetic. Prince never explained it, yet over time, the shift spoke more clearly than any statement ever could. Sylvester, too, never referred to that evening, but in a 1982 interview, while speaking about his artistic influences, he offered a quiet line that left listeners thinking long after the words had faded. Some people, simply by crossing your path, leave an imprint that endures for a lifetime. Back then, few noticed its weight, but in hindsight, those moments feel like sealed messages delivered straight to the soul. Years later, long after both had stepped away from the stage at the height of their power, they are still remembered as symbols of that era. And yet, what remains is not only what truly happened, but also what never did, and perhaps never could. Perhaps they shared a quiet room, a measured dance, or a hesitant exchange beneath the muted glow of yellow lights. Or perhaps they only stood close in stillness, drawing the same air in silence. The quiet between these two artists who lived for sound became the most resonant note of an era when being authentic carried a heavy cost. Two distinct black men, challenging the limits of culture and expectation, choosing to recognize one another without ever needing to speak a name. Maybe that, more than any record or performance, is what made them extraordinary. The truth lives nowhere in full. There is no recording, no admission, no final proof. Yet in the memories of those who lived through that time amid drifting smoke, softened lights, and the brief looks they shared there remained the sense that something rare had passed through the room, as if, for just an instant, they had glimpsed a silent kind of affection. And if there was ever true feeling between Prince and Sylvester, it was not in gestures or visible closeness. but in the stillness of a night when two spirits allowed themselves to exist honestly in a world not yet prepared for such freedom. It was a connection deep, unspoken, and quietly powerful beyond measure. Even before they ever crossed paths, Rufus Wainwright sensed something unusual, faint, undefined, yet impossible to ignore. Each time he sat at the piano, a trace of purple seemed to slip into his melodies, like a quiet presence he never invited but always felt. Rufus never tried to label the feeling, once remarking only, "I used to imagine Prince watching me from a velvet cloud." It sounded playful on the surface, yet anyone who knew Rufus's music understood it was far more than a passing fantasy. The most curious part is that there has never been a single photograph of them together. Not a lyric, not a liner note, not even a passing mention linking their names. That absence only intensifies the fascination surrounding their connection. It is precisely this quiet that has shaped a kind of poetry, a story told without words, a musical memory that continues to live in the hearts of listeners, like a beautiful legend felt deeply, yet never spoken aloud.